Have you ever wondered how the relationship between black people and law enforcement came to be what it is today? In our quest for understanding, it's important to remember that history isn't just dates and facts, it's the context that shapes our present. Today, we're embarking on a chronological journey, exploring the evolution of this complex relationship. We will delve into the roots of systemic issues, tracing back the threads of time. To fully comprehend this, we must journey back to the earliest interactions. Our story begins in the 1700s, during the era of slavery. This was a time when the law wasn't an institution that served all people equally. Instead, it was often wielded as a formidable tool to uphold the oppressive system of slavery. Let's take a step back into those times. The 1700s saw the establishment of the first formalized law enforcement bodies in the United States, but these weren't your modern-day police forces. They were slave patrols, tasked with chasing down runaways and preventing slave revolts. Their main goal? To maintain the status quo of slavery. Fast forward to the mid-1800s, post the Civil War, and we see a new set of laws coming into play called the Black Codes. These were designed to limit the freedom of African Americans and ensure cheap labor supply. It was a clever yet cruel loophole that kept black people tethered to their former masters. Law enforcement played a significant role in enforcing these black codes. They arrested African Americans for minor infractions, often leading to sentences of hard labor. Thus, the law enforcement agencies of the time were not protectors of all citizens, but rather enforcers of a system that perpetuated racial inequality. This was just the beginning of an intricate web of history that we are still untangling today. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, a time of great change and upheaval. The Civil Rights era was a time when African Americans fought for equality, and law enforcement played a significant role in these events. Their role, however, was not always one of protection and service. In numerous instances, peaceful protests were met with brutal force from the police. The infamous Bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama, is one such example where law enforcement officers attacked peaceful marchers with billy clubs and tear gas. This was not an isolated incident, but rather a pattern that became all too familiar during this era. In the midst of these struggles, the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964, outlawing discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. However, this did not immediately translate to an improvement in the relationship between black communities and law enforcement. Despite the progress made, the relationship between black communities and law enforcement remained fraught with tension. In recent years, this issue has come back into the spotlight, prompting a national conversation. A wave of notable incidents has swept across our nation, triggering protests and calls for change. These incidents are not isolated or random events, but rather, they are the symptoms of a deeper, systemic issue that weaves through the very fabric of our society, which is systemic racism. Systemic racism is not an easy concept to grasp. It's not as straightforward as personal prejudice or explicit discrimination. It's the invisible machinery of our institutions, subtly yet persistently operating in ways that disproportionately disadvantage black communities. It's a complex, deeply entrenched problem that demands comprehensive solutions. In response to this, there have been concerted efforts to reform the system. These efforts have taken various forms, from grassroots activism and community organizing to legislative initiatives and policy changes. They have challenged us to rethink our preconceptions, to question our biases, and to envision a more equitable and just society. There is a growing recognition that the relationship between black communities and law enforcement is not just a matter of individual attitudes or behaviors. It's a structural issue, rooted in our history and perpetuated by our institutions. And addressing this issue requires structural solutions. The path to change is long and winding, but understanding our history is the first step. We must confront our past, acknowledge the realities of the present, and commit to a future where justice and equality are not just ideals, but lived experiences for all. From the earliest interactions to the present day, the history of black people and cops is complex and multifaceted. We've journeyed through the early interactions, the Civil Rights era, to our modern times. Each step of this journey holds significant lessons, highlighting the importance of understanding our past to shape a better, more inclusive future. As we continue to grapple with these issues, remember, history doesn't just inform us, it shapes us. Be sure to hit that like or subscribe button and keep being curious, beautiful, and continue learning. Check out some of my other videos and keep staying curious.